Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Grant's Interest Rate Observer of the Air. The podcast is The Current Yield. I am Jim Grant, and with me, as always, is Eric Whitehead at the controls. And with me, as frequently as Phil Grant, who runs our almost daily Grants department. Absent, with leave, is the great Evan Lorenz, deputy editor of Grants, he of the melodious voice. Evan was tossing around free weights yesterday. I think he was, these 250-pound things.
Oh, yeah, I know those, yeah.
And I said, he seemed to have wrenched something. I don't know. I told him he goes to 500 with each hand. I told him to start light, and he wouldn't do it. So anyway, but he'll be back soon, I hope. Ladies and gentlemen, this is it's the Valentine's Day podcast.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm Jim Grant. I am wearing a red polka dot bow tie, which seems to some in this office a little precious. I could tell by the way they looked at me. But you got to dress like you mean it, especially on Valentine's Day.
Yeah, that's right.
Look at these guys. One of them's wearing washed trousers. The other one's got light blue socks with.
I'm saving my costume for later.
I think those are Santa Claus. Yeah, they are. Eric Whitehead's wearing Santa Claus socks on Valentine's Day.
Oh, there's only 10 months left until Christmas.
Yeah. You have to get them washed, Eric. Just put them aside. Today we're going to talk about negative interest rates. They don't call them negative for nothing. We talk about books that we are reading. We're going to talk about store of value. We're going to critique a performance on CNBC this morning by Governor Lael Brainard. And we're going to talk about expectations, which may or may not be anchored. In fact, we're going to begin with expectations and their anchorage. Phil?
Anchors away. So on Tuesday, the Bank of America Merrill Lynch research group released their monthly fund manager survey, which is always a useful gauge of sentiment. And what was notable to me was that despite the terrific start to the year for stock prices, that the bearishness kind of pervades. So allocation to equities is at 6% overweight, which is the lowest level in more than 2 years. 44% of respondents, a net 44%, I should say, of respondents are overweight cash, which is the highest proportion since January of 2009. Very surprising. And a large majority of respondents expect global GDP growth to weaken over the next 12 months, while secular stagnation is, again, the consensus view,
for Pete's sake,
with 55% of those surveyed bearish on both growth and inflation for the next year. So seeing that reminded me of a very short item that ran in Grants 2 years ago titled How Long Secular? Noting that the same survey found that in February of 2016, that 88% of respondents said that secular stagnation was the future. 1 year later, Donald Trump in office, that number dropped to 43%. So 45% swing, secular stagnation 1 year.
So how long secular?
How long
right?
secular?
Yeah,
right.
for you, 6 months.
That's right.
Well, the Fed is very, very big on so-called anchoring of expectations. That's their view that for a central bank to succeed in the, not war against inflation, I guess the partnership with inflation is the term these days, it must somehow control expectations. And expectations seem rather, uncontrollable, or at least rather fickle. In fact, one might almost say, borrowing from the late, great Richard Russell, that markets make opinions. Is that right? Yeah. All right, so my day began with reading an email that came in from Paul Isaac, the invaluable Paul Isaac, source of so many ideas at Grants. And Paul relayed a tweet by Charlie Bilello. And Mr. Bilello did a public benefaction in compiling a matrix of negative yields. Now, he listed the countries that have issued securities quoted at nominal yields of less than nothing. He arranged them by maturity, right? Switzerland has like a 10-year horizon for negative yields, and then Japan's got securities that go negative out to 9 years, and Germany is 8 years, Denmark 6, Netherlands, Finland 5, so Ireland 3, Spain 2. And then it gets interesting. It gets Portugal gets 1. Portugal has 1 year of, and so does Malta. And so does Bulgaria. Now, Bulgaria caught my eye because in the day it was the kind of place that Eric Whitehead would take his family. It was a communist regime, a little Spartan to be sure, but if you went on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, you could get a square meal there, I think, especially in the capital city. And they've also got a good Days Inn motel, too, which Eric likes while traveling. And that was Bulgaria then. Now, Bulgaria now is a very different proposition. I'm not sure that the Whiteheads would care to visit now. It seems to be a triple B country, balances its budget. But still, it has a security maturing in 2020, a little less than a year, and it is priced to deliver a yield of 36 basis points negative. In brackets, 36 basis points. So you pay Bulgaria, about the day before yesterday, it was a totalitarian regime. We shouldn't hold that against it. It's triple B country. But still, Bulgaria. It's like Bulgaria, right? You pay them. Now, this is, I know that the European Central Bank has pitched its intervention rate at minus 40 basis points. So I'm sure that a mathematically inclined central banker could say, well, it's trivial that these things all fall out from the central bank's intervention rate. But still, I mean, there's 8.8 trillion, I think Fabiano
That's
Santini
correct. Yeah,
said. 8.8 trillion today is priced to less than nothing. And bear in mind, the Bulgaria paper was in euros, euro-denominated. But a very, very engaged reader of ours, the most successful and learned Keith Bronstein in Chicago, emailed, he was watching CNBC this morning, and he emailed to say when he was going to school, in fact, I think he sat under the teaching of Milton Friedman, and he learned that currency was a store of value and a medium of exchange. So, yes, all media of exchange, but none, he writes, a store of value. The dual role seems to have been permanently ruptured. And I would say that the new role of these currencies is units of macroeconomic policymaking, or tools thereof. So Keith asks, quote, what will be the store or stores of value as there is no interruption of money printing, if there's no interruption of money printing? And he apologizes for using that somewhat inadmissible phrase, money printing. So he said, rather, geometric debt creation. What happens if there's no interruption of that? And he characterizes that question as the question of the age, which indeed it might be. So negative rates. I see, Phil, that the San Francisco Fed, this couple of, I guess a week or so ago, was out, February 4th, was out with paper and analysis about negative rates. And I think the idea was that in the future, they might be a little bit of okay. Yeah.
And separately, they also posit that quantitative easing could be an effective tool even outside of moments of financial distress, just as a kind of a monetary maintenance.
Yeah, well, QE in a way is another term for open market operations. But I think that they mean something a little bit different than conventional pre-crisis open market operations. They mean like QE, right? Going in,
That's what I
buying
suspect.
$2.9 trillion worth, as Mario Draghi has done in Europe. And Mario Draghi was out the other day saying, yes, we could revisit QE. Nothing is off the table, said he. And this speaks to the question of conviction and of sentiment. So the European Central Bank was going to begin to raise its negative intervention rate. Now it's going to think about not raising it and think about restoring perhaps QE, blah, blah, blah. Yes. Although I see that the president of the Bundesbank, the German central bank, was out recently saying the time is past time to normalize the ECB's most abnormal interest rates. Well, we'll see about that. So this program, ladies and gentlemen, does not come unsponsored. No. Well, in the first place, we're sponsored by us. It's a little bit narcissistic to be sure.
Nothing wrong with that.
Oh, Kim Kardashian has made rather a good living.
That's right. That's right. Shame is out. It's 2019.
Well, and we are sponsored by Audible, which is the way to listen to books. And we are also sponsored by Pitney Bowes SendPro. And I'm going to tell you a little about SendPro right now. SendPro Online by Pitney Bowes. SendPro. It's the online software that helps you save time and money no matter what you send. It could be letters, packages, overnights, flats. It could be a redemption letter to that annoying value investor in whose fund you have invested. And all goes down. Okay, the intrinsic value of the stocks goes up, the prices goes down, and you, Ingrate, want to redeem. Go ahead. You know as soon as you redeem, it's going to be up 50%, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Anyway, that's
But you can use the SendPro to redeem. I think that's really the...
Yes, it gets back on track. You can use SendPro Online by Pitney Bowes to redeem, and you'll always pay the right amount. It comes with a free 10-pound scale that weighs and calculates rates for you. Plus, you can compare options between UPS, and FedEx right at your fingertips. So it says here that on January 27th of this year, USPS, that must mean the Postal Service, raised its rates, unlike a certain central bank we know. But just by using SendPro Online, you get discounts up to 40% off USPS priority mail shipping. And you get 5 cents off every letter you send. No additional equipment is needed. Just log on to your computer and use your own printer to print shipping labels and stamps. SendPro Online is only $14, $14.99 a month, and listeners get a free 30-day trial when you visit PB, as in peanut butter, pb.com/grantspod, pb.com/grantspod. Yeah, so experience the convenience of SendPro Online and do try it for free at pb.com/grantspod. Yeah, so thank you, Penny Bowes. So, every once in a while, Phil, some of our literary listeners ask what the heck we are reading. And it's a very good question. I happen to have been looking, this is a book that's been out a while. I think it's been a while. Let's see. The title is Leadership at the Fed by Donald F. Kettle. Now, Kettle is spelled in a funny kind of way. You'll need the spelling to look it up. Kettl, Leadership at the Fed. And I see that Yale University Press published it in 1986. And this is the kind of a portrait profiles of Fed chairman, and it did not get up to Janet Yellen, so they're all chairmen, and there's an occasional Treasury Secretary mixed in here. But it's fascinating, I find, reading this thing to recall or to learn what our monetary masters were worried about in the past. And Phil, I was especially struck by the information that this is the early 60s. So John F. Kennedy came into office in 1961, and he was concerned with the monetary situation. The dollar then was exchangeable into gold at $35 an ounce. Foreign central banks could make that exchange on demand. And the U.S. is running its gold stock down. The rate of inflation was quiescent, but still there was this persistent drain of monetary gold abroad. And do you know that John F. Kennedy later confided, I think he told Arthur Schlesinger Jr., his speechwriter and muse, he told someone, and Schlesinger related, that two things worried him most. One was nuclear war with the Soviet Union, and the second was the current account deficit. Can you imagine? I mean, you never hear about the current account deficit in the Fed. I mean, so the United States has not, I think, not been in a trade surplus in about 150 years. You never hear about the deficit in the U.S. international investment position. That is what we own of foreigners versus what they own of us. That's a huge deficit. You hear a lot about the Treasury deficit, but it too is meant to be a somewhat antiquated calculation that really, if you listen to the modern monetary theorists, is not large enough. And really nobody is standing up for fiscal probity, as it used to be called. I sound like an old guy. Fine, I'm an old guy. Yeah. But I'm thinking, Phil and Eric, that when the Donald F. Kettle, if he is inclined to write the next volume of this, the successive volume, he might find a very different set of worries. I mean, Mariner Eccles, who was the Fed chairman in the late 30s and in the 40s, I guess, Mariner Eccles was concerned about the latent and not so latent inflation being stored up by the suppression of interest rates, a project to facilitate the financing of World War II. That was Mariner Eccles' concern. And so financial repression for that chairman of the Fed was a source of deep concern. And now it's like, it's how we save the world. Right? Mario Draghi he has not confessed to us, as far as I know, maybe I missed something, or maybe he confides his intimate circle, but he has, I think, not publicly acknowledged second thoughts about the consequences of these very low interest rates. He seems to think that they have been just fine. Well, they've been just fine for Japan for 20 years, and they haven't gotten out of it.
This is, of course, just my opinion, but it seems to be a coordinated perspective on the part of global central bankers to manage the expectations of their populations and their financial markets.
Yes,
and admitting any sort of doubt about what they're doing seems to, runs counter to their stated policy.
And you kind of have to see, sometimes I imagine myself in the shoes of one of these people, and I think how annoying must be this chirping off stage to them, my chirping off stage to them. You see what happened? I mean, Jay Powell is a very attractive personality, and I say that especially because he seems to know exactly what he doesn't know about the future, which, as with most of us, is nothing. He knows nothing about the future, really. He guesses about it, as we all do, but he knows nothing about it, and he conveys that. And but you're written off as a weakling if you do that, if you acknowledge that. And I think it's an occupational hazard, although it is the true expression of the proper intellectual humility by the thoughtful person. But it's not going to get you the plaudits of Wall Street. And when the Fed changed its mind recently, famously, that was an expression of what? It was an expression of uncertainty, certainly, but I think also a kind of an acknowledgement that it's really got nothing to do except to read the papers.
I mean, well, that's what data dependent is, right? If the data has changed, then you're supposed to change course.
Okay, I was on CNBC today. Yeah, I was.
Congrats.
Thank you. And my friend Rick Santelli actually let me say what I wanted to say, and I was very grateful to him for that, even if the viewers of CNBC might not have been, but I was grateful. So Rick threw me some friendly kind of batting practice, it must be said, some batting practice pitches. He said, Jim, what do you think of negative rates? You know, knowing full well what I was going to. And what do you think of the Fed's balance sheet? So I used that opportunity to repeat what we have said in grants, and I guess I have said in public elsewhere, that the Federal Reserve technically is insolvent as of September 30th, 2018, according to its own financials, which you can find if you really search for them. Just type in H41, take you to the Fed's financial disclosure forms, and you'll see the September 30th financials. Looks like page 7. There's a breakdown of cumulative loss or gain on the securities portfolio, and that cumulative loss is now about $69 billion. Capital is $39 billion. The Fed is leveraged 100 to 1. The New York Fed 200 to 1. And I say, you know, it is rather an eyesore. It is not financially substantive as a fact because the Treasury has pledged to support the Fed through any vicissitude. It is standing by to make good any losses. They promised that in an almost incomprehensible footnote to the H41 form in early January 2011, but they did that. They did commit to supporting the Fed if, as, and when its securities portfolio under the stress of higher interest rates was to show a mark-to-market loss. The Fed doesn't mark itself to market, so as I say, this is rather symbolic, but the symbolism I do hold, is important. So anyway, so then Rick said, well, what do you think of Lael Brainard, Governor Brainard, who preceded me as I think Rick's guest this morning, and she said in a very cogent way, as she always does, she said that their balance sheet normalization is underway, and much of it has in fact occurred, and they proceeding carefully as prudent people would. And then she said something that I thought was telling of the Fed, the way the Fed does business. It said, we know that liquidity demand on the part of financial institutions is much higher than it was pre-crisis, so we want to make sure that there's an ample supply of reserves to guard against volatility. I said, what is that? Now, there is volatility of all kinds. There might be the volatility that was attendant upon a liquidity shortage in the banking system. But I think, maybe I'm just too markets-minded, but I think volatility for most people would connote that kind of volatility, which caused the Fed to do an about-face into the new year. And I asked Rick, and I asked the world again rhetorically, so what business is the Fed in? Is the business of forestalling or doctoring bear markets, which some of us regard as value restoration projects or works? So is that their job? No volatility? You can suppress volatility, but you're not going to destroy it. Anyway, it seemed to me a worrisome expression, a candid one to be sure, but a worrisome expression of what the Fed is doing to us collectively. It is destroying bond markets worldwide. Here I go. Did it sound like a speech to you?
No.
Eric,
You're good.
it's fine, right? Yeah.
Well, it's important. I mean, it's a strange thing to say.
Yeah, okay. But, I'm going to stop saying it. Oh, I know what else I have to do. I have to tell the world about Audible, which is, I have confessed right here on this very radio program, I've confessed to some of the least healthy, hygienic sleep habits in the 5 boroughs of New York. I've confessed to perfect strangers that I go to bed with my cell phone under my pillow listening to the Audible version of James Boswell's Life of Samuel Johnson. I do that. But I am not a monomaniac on the subject or a complete bore. No, I have other interests in life, and one of them is baseball, and it began with the pitchers and catchers reporting the spring training, right?
That's right.
Like today, right?
Yeah,
That's
earlier this week, yeah.
Oh, today's what, Thursday? Yesterday they came. Good news, right, Eric? Yes, very good. Boy, I think it would never come, but it did. I am going to tell you about Audible.com, where you can get Life of Samuel Johnson and listen to it as you go to sleep. It'll make you a much more literate person. Of course, you won't sleep much, but first things first. But here's what Audible.com has got to say to you. Could listening make you a better parent, a better leader, even a better person, or a better sleeper? No, never mind. Could listening to motivating fitness programs get you fit? By the way, no, you got to do the work.
Right. First you listen to the programs, then you work out.
Yeah, but you can't forget to work. You can listen to it all day. I mean, for Pete's sake, just do the damn push-ups. Where was I? Could listening inspire you to start something new? Well, with Audible, you get access to an unbeatable selection of audiobooks, including bestsellers, motivation, mysteries, thrillers, memoirs, somewhat antiquated biographies of 18th century literary figures, and more. Audible has the largest selection of audiobooks on the planet, and now, with Audible Originals, the selection has gotten even more custom and content made for members. Honor of the beginning of the 2019 baseball season, a book that Philip has just finished. I think you can attest to its excellence.
It's terrific,
no?
yes.
Yeah. All right, here's the title. Ted Williams. Yeah, number 9. Ted Williams. It's the biography of an American hero by Lee Montville. And this is just, I've read it myself. I also like My Turn at Bat. In fact, I love My Turn at Bat, Ted Williams' autobiography. That is not an Audible book, by the way. I suspect it might be one day, but it's not now. But Ted Williams by Lee Montville is, that's Montville. And all right, so I've marked a passage, and this is one of my favorites. So Ted Williams, as some of you may know, detested the press. How anyone can hate what, Phil, what you and I do, Eric, what you help us do for a living, like type for a living. How people can take offense to this, I don't know. But some people do. In fact, we know people in Washington, D.C. who hate what we do.
Right.
Nuts to them.
Yeah, tough luck.
Yeah. Hey, if the shoe fits, wear it fit,
Yeah,
okay?
That's right.
Where was I? Yes, okay. So Ted Williams in the press. So he called the Knights of the Keyboard. And they got him, and he got on them. And it was hate at first typing, and it persisted throughout Williams's Hall of Fame career. So here is Lee Montville describing Ted's relationship, if that's the word, with the Boston sports writers. All right, all male. Here it is. So it remained, says Montville, at its cranky norm. It was roughly the same relationship South Korea had established with North Korea since the war. Two sides didn't talk much, and when they did, it was in angry outbursts. Williams and the writers stared a lot across their own 38th parallel, each waiting for the other to make some foolish, provocative move to begin hostilities again. And it goes on from there. This is fabulous. Okay, so that's Ted Williams by Lee Montville. So Audible members can choose 3 titles every month, 1 audiobook and 2 Audible originals you can't hear anywhere else. Audible members also get access to exclusive audio fitness programs to start the new year off on the right foot. Listen on any device, anytime, anywhere, at home, at the gym, while sleeping. Oh, I didn't say that. On your commute or just on the go. You'll also enjoy easy audiobook exchanges, rollover credits, and audiobook library you'll keep forever, even if you cancel. So Audible, the most inspiring minds, the most compelling stories, the best place to listen. Get started with a 30-day trial when you go to audible.com/grant or text grant to 500500 and listen for a change. That's audible.com/grant or text grant to 500500 and listen for a change. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. This is Jim Grant on behalf of the Current Yield. Talk to you next time.